Okay, well, great. Welcome everyone to our Zoom session on using aerial imagery to identify ash stands on your land. We're super happy to have Colleen Teerling from the Maine Forest Service with us today to share her method for doing exactly that. And just before we get started, I want to say a huge thank you to Nancy Olmsted at the Nature Conservancy for really pushing this forward and all her efforts to coordinate and make sure that we followed up with this great training. The idea for this came about at our annual Land Stewards Gathering back in March, which Colleen was at. Thank you so much. And she mentioned that she had this method, and everybody was super interested. So we thought, well, we should definitely follow up and get some information about how to do that ourselves. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over to you, Colleen.
Okay. So let me just tell you what I'm hoping to do today is I'd like to sort of tell you a little bit about how I use Google Earth. I am not an expert by any means in Google Earth, but there are a few tricks I've learned to use with Google Earth to help find ash trees. And then just show you some examples. I'll share my screen and just show you what I do in the process that I go through at a few different sites. And then I'm hoping that for all of you guys who have computers and have Google Earth on your computers, I will give you a location and have you go do that yourself, with turning me in the background. Those who don't have computers, I'm just going to keep doing it myself, and I will talk about what I'm doing. So people who are working on their own computers at the same site will be able to sort of follow along, and people can unmute themselves at that point in time and just call out questions or anything like that. And so everybody can kind of go through the site on their own. And then after that, I'll open it up to anybody who has sites that that they want to look at, and give it the site to, or we'll let you share the screen, and you can go to a site and we'll just go through the process all together. So keep that in mind and we'll see how it goes. This is going to be really informal and kind of experimental because I haven't really done this before. But so if people have questions, shout. Donna, do you want them to just unmute themselves and ask a question if they want to? It's not a huge.
I think that's fine. We've got 24, including you and me right now. So I think we should do it that way. If it gets unmanageable, we can change,
Okay.
shift. But I think for now, let's try just saying, if you have a question, if you have a thought, idea, if you have you want to try something, just unmute and give us a shout. We'll work on it together.
Okay, sounds good. So how I use Google Earth to find ash is, I started this when I was looking for biological control sites when we first got EAB in Maine. And Maine is a big state, and where do I find ash in areas where we have EAB, other than just driving around on the roads? And so I started looking at Google Earth, and I wondered if I could make use of the fact that in the spring, ash trees are one of the last trees to leaf out in the spring. So in the spring, there's this little window when maples and oaks and all the other species have leaves on, but ash is still bare. It's a really little window, but there is that little window. But then in the fall, there's a much bigger window because ash trees are the first trees to lose their leaves. And so they will start to turn color when the rest of the trees are still green. The rest of the deciduous trees are still green. They also have a fairly distinctive color, especially white ash. I think less so with brown ash. And I can't really speak to green at all because there's just not that much green in our forests. But white ash turns this kind of yellow purpley color, which translates on Google Earth to bronze. And so as I was looking at Google Earth, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, is my screen shared there? You guys can see that? All right, good. Um, so, oh dear. Okay, I just have to move my bar here so I can see my little buttons. Google Earth has this cool little feature. Ah, shoot. Okay, this got really small. So you may not be able to see this really well, but there is on the top
Good
bar.
morning. I'm Melanie Woodson, Commissioner of the Maine Department of Environmental Protection and co-chair of the Maine Climate Council, joined today by my co-chair, Anna Pingree, Director of the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation in the Future. It is great to see you all here today. Really appreciate you taking the time to spend this day with us. Unfortunately, I have to say I'm glad to be inside.
Does anybody know where that sound is coming from? I don't think that's me.
That we're expecting all across the state.
I have no
And so
idea what that is.
that much like the storms that we saw this
How
winter,
strange.
that we are continuing to see the drastic effects of climate change across the seasons here in Maine.
Yeah,
All right, so now I'm going to check some of the slides, which means I have to figure out if I got the right button. Last time it was the big green button.
Like it might be coming from Jake.
It's not the big green button. What do I have to point at?
Okay, there. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Okay, we're good.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So Google Earth, there are little buttons up top. There is a button that looks like a clock with an arrow around it. And that allows you to look at historical data. And so you can, and so I'm gonna just go to East Coat Road. East Coat Road in Lewiston. It'd help if I would spell it right. So this is actually one of our new biological control sites. So if you click this button up here, you get a little bar that tells you all the times that a satellite photo has been taken of this site. So the most recent one clearly here is in the winter because there's a lot of bare trees. So winter, that doesn't tell us a whole lot. So just using the buttons on either end, you can go backwards or forwards in time. So going back one time. Okay, so there is a mix of colored trees and green trees. And if you go back to the previous the winter picture, you can see that everything there is almost purely deciduous trees. There's a few conifers here and there, but this whole block here is mainly deciduous trees. So when I go back and I see that there are some trees that are looking kind of a bronzy red color and some trees that are green, that immediately makes me think, oh, that's probably, those trees are probably ash because they're the first ones to turn when everything else is green. But let's just go back a little bit further. That's not a great picture, but again, you can see that some trees are starting to turn and other trees are not. So those are, again, it means that they're probably, those are probably ash. Winter doesn't tell you much. Winter, and they're, full summer. Again, that doesn't tell you much. You go back too far and, oh, okay, so there's a, let's go a little closer. There you can see, again, I'm just gonna have to go in a little closer here. So you can see that very typical brownish, bronzy color of white ash. You might be able to use some of these bright red trees. Those might be maples that are starting to turn, but you can see there's still a lot of green trees, but a lot of trees that have that very distinctive bronzy color of white ash trees that are turning in the fall. So those are definitely white ash trees. And that is a site where we're going to be releasing. There's a lot of mature white ash in that area. So I am next going to go to North Gorham Road in Maine. Sorry. And this is happens to be another biological control site where one of our fairly early sites. So again, you can move this bar back and forth with your cursor, or you can click on it. So the most recent one, you can see that it looks like, to me, just looking at it, I would say those are probably a lot of white pine trees here, mature white pines. There are some very bronzy colored trees, which makes me think those are probably white ash. But you would probably want to go back, and you can zoom out a little bit, and you can see, okay, there's some more bronzy trees here. Lots of, there's not, most of the trees look like they're still green. But let's just go back in time. Okay, everything is green. There you can see that's the winter. So you see, okay, yes, those are pines, or at least they are conifer trees. There are a lot of deciduous trees in this area, a lot of deciduous trees along the stream. And so just going back a little further, another winter scene doesn't tell you much. Winter, again, doesn't tell you much. So now we're getting back to like 2014, 2015. Once you get earlier than about 2012, 2014, sometimes the resolution is not that great. But this looks like similar to the first picture, the first time we saw that, most of the trees are still green, because we know all of these trees up here and all these trees along here are deciduous trees. But there are some that are starting to turn color, and they have that kind of very typical bronzy color. So you think, okay, yeah, those are probably ash. What you can't see under here is that there's a whole lot of ash understory underneath the pines. But back in 2014, you might not have even seen that. So let's go back just a little further. Summer, and winter. So not telling us much that's new. And there you're getting back 2011, pretty bad resolution. So going back to this time up here, you can see that there are some ash trees. This is an ash tree in his yard, which is a great big beautiful ash tree. There's definitely ash along the stream, and these are ash trees here. So it gives you an idea that there is some ash. This method is, you're very much dependent on when the pictures are taken, when the satellite photos are taken. It doesn't always work for every site, but it's a fairly good tool. So now I thought I'd go up to Fort Kent in northern Maine, and I seem to have less success, or at least less confidence, in northern Maine when I'm working with brown ash. I think there are different species of trees. I know there are different species of trees up north than there are down south. And I think up north, there are some trees that maybe have a leaf on and leaf off that are somewhat similar to ash. So it's not quite as obvious. And I definitely would have to ground truth much more carefully up north than I would down south. So I have less confidence up there. But let's go up to Bouchard Family Farm in Fort Kent. Okay. And going down here. So the most recent picture here is, again, looking at that, I would say that is probably an autumn picture, maybe a spring picture. There are some trees that are bare. Some trees, like up here, you can see those are almost certainly, and down here are conifer trees, but it looks to me like there are some puffy deciduous trees that have leaves on them. So it makes me wonder, maybe in this area there's ash because those trees are bare while other deciduous trees have leaves on them. But let's look at other time periods. Oh, and I should also mention that up here there are dates. So it tells you what year and what month. I assumed that that was the month and the year that the picture was taken, but it lies. That date really lies, because there are times that I will see what's clearly an autumn picture and it says, oh, this was taken in 04 in 4 2022. It's like, well, that was not January, February, March, April. That was not April for sure. So that may be the date that the pictures were put up rather than the date that the pictures were taken. So don't entirely trust that. Like this says 9/22. It says it was taken in September. Maybe, maybe not. So going back, that looks very similar. Okay, there is a summer picture. So that summer pictures don't tell us a lot. Again, that's another picture where there seems to be leaf on and leaf off. It's a little tricky to tell what, but there looks like, there's some trees there that are turning color. These trees here, I'm not sure what's happening with them. It's a little, let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, those trees are bare. But you can see deciduous trees here that have their leaves on. So these are probably ash. Summer picture, starting to get kind of blurry. Winter picture. So let's see. Okay, so that we're getting back really blurry. So that winter picture probably is the best winter picture we have. And yeah, it doesn't really tell you much. It's not a great picture, but you can see looks like there are conifer trees here. These are definitely deciduous trees. So let's just sort of go forward again. You can see here that looks like there are some trees that are maybe starting to turn earlier than the rest of the trees. I'm sorry, this is not an absolute, like, this is not really cut and dried. It is very much just sort of looking at pictures and interpreting and working with whatever you've got. So I would say that, looking at this, yeah, there are definitely deciduous trees that have their leaves on, in multiple satellite photos here. Let's just zoom out a little bit. Sorry. And I happen to know that this is a gorgeous black ash stand here. Just this amazing, unlike almost anything I've seen in Maine, it's this big grassy meadow with pure black ash in it, and it's gorgeous. And it's a biocontrol site, so we're a little bit hopeful for that site. So you can see here that the leaves are off on these trees, but there are still leaves on here. And then these are deciduous trees here. Sorry, conifer trees, hardwood trees, softwood trees. And so there are other species of deciduous trees here that have their leaves on, a lot of trees here that have their leaves on, but this area here, going in, this area here, the leaves are off. So you think, okay, that's probably an ash site. And as it turns out, that is a black ash site, a really beautiful black ash site. And there's a ton of black ash all around here. So it does work up north. If you do this up north, do be careful, because there are there may be other species that might confuse you. So definitely do some ground truthing. I will maybe do, let's go to Colby College. Oops. So Colby College has a big woodlot area. And this is another biological control site. I'm just sort of going with the easy stuff, places where I know that there is ash. So here is a summer picture. Green everywhere, doesn't tell you much at all. So let's just go forward in time here. There's a winter picture. So that tells us we know that there are hardwoods here, down here, sorry, softwoods down here, but lots of deciduous trees throughout. And you can also, in the winter, you can sometimes see where the streams are. Ash is often near streams, especially black ash. Go forward again. Summer, that doesn't tell us anything other than there's lots of trees. Winter, again, doesn't tell us anything other than the softwood versus hardwood. Okay, so now we're starting to see something here. We can see, let's zoom in a little bit. We can see that there's a lot of green here, compared to the pure winter picture. So we know that a lot of that green there, the stuff that is green, like in here, those are probably not ash. So that tells us then that all of this brown here, where the leaves have already come off, or actually this might be a spring, so it may be that the leaves are not even on yet. So the maples and the oaks, they leafed out, but the brown here is trees that do not have their leaves on. So those are probably ash. And as it turns out, there is a ton of ash in here. And that is actually all ash. So that doesn't give us any color there, but just, the leaf on versus leaf off, between the different species of deciduous trees, tells us that that's probably ash, and it is. So one last site I thought before I open it up to have other people try on their own. I'm going to go to Newport, which I think is a site which does not work as well because of the timing of the satellite photo. So I'll just show you what it looks like when it doesn't necessarily work well. I'm going to go up here. And this is, again, a beautiful black ash site. It's got a mix of black ash and white ash, as well as other trees. So let's just go back in time. Okay, so you can see here that there's leaf off here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Actually, maybe this does work. Okay, looks like to me that there are some leafy trees here. So maybe these are ash here. There's a summer picture, leaves on everything. Okay, we're getting back. Yeah, too fuzzy to see much. So full summer, leaves on everything. Is this a winter picture or is this? It's a little bit tricky to tell. I think these are deciduous deciduous trees here. So it means that maybe a lot of these trees are ash. Having ground truth this, I would say this is not pure ash here. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on. going back between, so. This site is just a little bit trickier for me to interpret, just because I don't see any color in any of the years. And it's a little, and there are no true winter pictures where I can say for sure there's nothing here but conifers. So it's a little tricky to say, like, I'm not enough of an expert to say, are all of these trees here conifers or are some of these deciduous trees? So I would look at this and think, okay, there's probably ash here, because I think there are leaves on the trees here and there's no leaves on these trees here, but I'm not entirely sure. And so I would have to go out and look at them. And as it turns out, this is all black ash along here and there's a fair bit of white ash here. So do people have questions before I go any further? And before we have people try working on their own?
We have one question in the chat, which is,
Okay.
oh, it looks like John just answered it, but the question is, just to confirm, do ash trees both leaf out later than the average tree in spring and lose their leaves earlier than the average tree in the fall?
Yes. Yeah, so you have those two windows. You've got a really small window in the spring, because it's maybe only a week between when the maples and the oaks and other trees leaf out and the ash leaf out. Depending on how warm it is, it's a very small window. But you have a much broader window in the fall, because the ash start, especially the white ash, start to turn color earlier, and brown ash as well, brown or black. And then they leaf off, and so you have this window where just the ash trees are colored, but the oaks and the maples and the other trees are still green. So you've got that window, and then you go a little further into the fall, and you have the ash trees have dropped their leaves, but the oaks or the maples are starting to turn color, and maybe the oaks are starting to turn color because the maples tend to go a little earlier than the oaks do. So you can look at that, and so if you see an aerial satellite photo where some trees are bare and other trees are starting to turn color, then you think, okay, the bare ones are probably the ash trees. If you go early in the fall and there are some trees that are colored and most of the deciduous trees are still green, then you say the colored trees are the ash trees. So that's sort of the scale that I use. And then you go too late into the fall, into the winter, that everything has lost their leaves. And that doesn't really tell you anything other than the bare ones are deciduous trees, and the ones that are still green are the coniferous trees.
Great.
So does that sort of make sense to you guys?
We have one other question here.
Okay.
Is there any species level phenology data for Maine that might tell us how that window is changing with climate change?
I'm sure there is. I would not be the expert to ask on that, though. I imagine there are people that have proper satellite photography that, with the proper dates, then they could see how that changes with time. I'm sure that is something that people are doing. For this, and for what I'm doing, as I said, I don't even trust the dates that are up here on or at least not the months that are up here on the sliding bar, because they don't always seem to make sense. So I don't think I would use this for looking at the change in with climate change, but I'm sure it's happening, and I'm sure there are people that are tracking that.
There's a comment or question from Nancy Colleen about the image dates. She says she sees a more specific date on the lower right of the Google Earth interface, very small font. Do you have any insight about that date?
That probably is that's probably a more accurate date. I will have to go look at that. I cannot see that right now, given where stuff is on my screen. But yeah, good point, then. Let's see. I will look at that. That may be more accurate.
Thanks, Nancy. Any other questions?
Okay, so what I thought I would do now is give you guys a site. So I'll just go there myself and show you what it is so that 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 you'll recognize it. But I will give you a site, and if you have Google Earth on your computer, open up Google Earth and follow along and with me as we're doing this and see what you can find, and see if you can find, do you think that there is astronaut at this site? So the site is going to be Spring Street, not Spring Drive, but Spring Street in Farmingdale. Not Farmington, but Farmingdale. And my Google Earth wants to take me to Spring Drive. Do not let it take you to Spring Drive. You want Spring Street. And just hit search. And that's what that looks like. So we're going to look at this area in between here. So I will just give people a couple of minutes to open up Google Earth on their computer, and do some searching, going forward and backwards in time. And if you do not have Google Earth on your computer, I will just do it here and you can watch me. If you do have Google Earth in your computer, do this yourself and follow along and listen to me as what I'm doing and see if you can see the same thing. And this distresses me because this is in my general neighborhood, and I'm not looking forward to when the ash trees start dying in my neighborhood. So do people have Google Earth opened? If you do you want to just briefly unmute and say yes or something like that, just so we know?
Yep, I've got it open, and it looks like there's an image that says it was taken in September 2020 that shows some color.
Okay, let me go up to. Okay, my most recent image says it was 5/2023 in less, but that's the image up here, or the date up here. I will have to look for Nancy's image date when I do not have Zoom open. Okay, so the most
we have a couple people who I just wanted to let you know, we have a couple people who are responding in chat that they do have Google Earth open.
Okay.
And somebody also says that on their Google Earth, the image date is in the middle at the bottom with day, month, and year. So just
okay. Okay, that's good to know. As I said, I am in no way an expert in Google Earth. I've just sort of learned this one cool little trick. So that's me, a little one trick pony here. But I will definitely go looking for maybe more accurate dates. And I do recognize that everybody's Google Earth may be visually slightly different depending on what you have for settings. But hopefully we can all go back through time. So if you go up to the little space, the little bar up top, and click on the camera, or not just, sorry, click on the clock with the arrow around it. That will show or hide that bar, the bar with all of the imagery, the historic imagery. So the most recent one I have here says 2023. And I'm looking at that and I'm seeing a bunch of trees. I have some trees up in the corner up by Northern Avenue that look like they're conifer trees. They're very dark green. There's a lot of light green that to me says that's probably deciduous trees. but and then there's a lot of brown that looks like leaf off. So I'm thinking, okay, that's probably ash, but let's go back in time and um, see what else there is. Okay, here's another picture that is much earlier. Looks like leaves are on all of the trees, but there are some trees that are starting to turn color. Sort of, and you can sort of see where there is probably a bit of a stream running down here. And again, that's probably a place where ashes may often be. And so the trees that in the previous image, the more recent, were bare, while other trees still had green on them. Now these trees are starting to turn color, while all the trees have leaves on them. So again, that confirms that those are probably ash. Going back a little further. Let's go back a bit further. Now I see something. For me, it says 4/20/20. And that's very clearly a winter scene, and you can see where the stream goes down in that little ravine. You can see that there is definitely a few conifer trees here, but all these things here that we were thinking were probably deciduous trees really are deciduous trees. So that tells me that there is definitely ash there. Not all of these deciduous trees are ash, but if so let's go back a little bit further in time just to see what there is there. There's a summer image with everything green. Another winter image showing you where the deciduous and versus conifer trees are. And then going back, another full summer scene. Although this one to me looks like, if we zoom in a little bit closer, you can start to see that some trees look like they're starting to, that they might be bare. So this might actually be a spring picture, where because a lot of these other trees are leafed out. Most of the deciduous trees are leafed out, but you can see some trees here that look kind of bare. They're looking pretty gray. Maybe those are trees that have not yet leafed out in the spring. I don't know. It says here that this is September 2013. I don't think so, because there's no color really, not much color. Not entirely sure. So that's why I like to look at multiple pictures, multiple images at different times, because you can put the tentative information that you glean from all of these images together to say, I'm pretty sure there's ash trees there. I go walking in this area all the time, so I know there's ash trees there. But even if I didn't, I would be fairly sure that between all of these images that there is ash in these couple of blocks here between Northern Avenue and Spring Street. Okay, and Nancy's got a question, maybe?
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. I'm wondering if what you're seeing as potentially trees that are still leafed off, I'm wondering if could that be the beginning of color change on ash in the fall? Like, could that be a purplish color like what you were saying?
I do sometimes see that purplish color. Okay, I'm just gonna zoom in as, yeah, that could be. They could be starting. Yeah, you're probably right. That could be September. They're just starting to turn that purplish color, and there's no yellow left.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
It's just so interesting, like we'll have to figure out this thing about the timestamp, because if we can't rely on that, then that's confusing. But if we can rely on it, then it helps us know what to be looking for. But I just wanted to get your sense of, like, okay, could that actually be the purplish color as opposed to?
Yeah, that actually makes more sense. I was wondering why they looked sort of gray to me, but then when I zoom in more, I think, okay, yeah, they're not bare. There are leaves on that tree. So that grayish color is probably just the very beginning of that purpley blush on the green leaves before they start to turn yellow. And then later on, the white ash will be yellow with that purple blush on that. And that makes it look, in an aerial aerial image will make it look kind of bronzy, a fairly distinctive bronzy color. So yeah, good point. Thank you, Nancy. That's almost certainly what we're seeing there. So for you guys that were following along at home, does this make sense? Were you able to get some information out of this?
It seems to me like it's one of those things where the more you do it, the better sense you get of what you might be seeing when you look at this imagery, and that doing some tests in areas where you can then go and ground truth it is part of the process of starting to be able to interpret what you're seeing from the air.
Yeah, very definitely. I know when I first started to do this, I was looking for sites down. This was down in York County when we just first found EAB down there. And I was going, well, I think maybe this is what I see, but I'm not sure. So I went out to my neighborhood and said, okay, here are ash trees here. And here is a great big giant ash tree right on the corner of this intersection. I know exactly what it is. And I went and looked at sites where I knew there were ash in forests. I knew there was ash on the side of the road, and just went back and forth through time, learning what it looked like in the different areas. And knowing when there was ash, what those ash trees looked like at all the different times that I could find. And just keep in mind that every little patch of the state is just a patchwork of this satellite imagery. And so each site is going to have a different set of images over different times. And there have been occasionally some sites where I look and there is nothing but midsummer and midwinter, and it gives me no information whatsoever. That's not common. Usually there are some autumn pictures which will allow me to tease out information about where the ash is, but you can't absolutely count on that. So, it's a really the luck of the draw as to when the imagery is taken.
Yeah.
Does anybody have sites, their land or land trust or private land that you want to look at that we can just sort of go through together?
I have one. This is Nancy again. It might take me a second to help us navigate to it because it's at one of our large preserves, but let's try. So it's at a preserve called the Basin Preserve in Phippsburg. I don't know if that's going to come up. Let's see, the Basin, Phippsburg, Maine. It does come up. So again, it's called the Basin.
Okay.
Phippsburg, Maine. I don't think it didn't come up for me with the word preserve, but if you just try the Basin, Phippsburg.
Let's try. The Basin, Phippsburg. All right, I see that.
All right, so that's like it's a sheltered cove, so it'll zoom you right to the middle of the cove.
Actually, why don't I stop sharing?
Oh, sure.
Nancy, why don't you
I should just share. Yes, that's a great idea. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Oh boy, and now I need to pick the right screen and share it. Bear with me here. Okay, so it says I'm screen sharing. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes. Yep.
Great. Okay, so the basin is the water part, and our land is to the south of the basin. So, and we don't own everything here, but this thing that says the Denny Reed Trailhead, we have land down here. I'm just trying to orient myself here. Let's see. So Harris Cemetery. Oh boy. Okay, right. So we go this way. I think the place that I'm looking for is in this area that is north of, oh no, here it is. Okay, so you might see something that says Harris Cemetery. That's an intersection with a pond. And we're going to be to the west of that, off of what is called here Dance Hall Road. And I know that there is ash in these woods. And so this image that on my screen, it says it was taken. This is weird because up at the top, this slider says 9/2013, but then at the bottom, it says imagery date 5/18/2012. So that's weird. I'm just gonna move the slider all the way to the right. So the most recent image, it looks like a winter. Oh, this is a composite. So here's
Yeah.
a situation where we're looking at a couple different images. Weird. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see there that, yeah, that whole patchwork.
So it looks to me like, so this, I'm going to zoom in a little closer just so I can see what's going on here. So it looks to me like there's, maybe a mix of deciduous trees here. I wouldn't feel confident,
Yeah.
Colleen, based on this color saying what that was. Does that?
Not it
Yeah.
just on that. No,
Okay.
I would want to look at
Yeah.
more.
Okay, so let's move the slider back one
But you can
notch.
see that there is where the deciduous trees are there in the
Right.
winter.
Yep. As I recall, there should be some coniferous trees here, but I think there's a lot of deciduous. Okay, so this of my slider bar says 10/20/21, and it looks to me like some of these trees have lost their leaves. Does that jive,
I think
Colleen?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing some branches in here.
Yeah. So you can see the
Okay.
branches. You can
Yep.
see the areas where the trees are still very green.
Yep.
So those are definitely not ash.
Right. Yep. Yeah, this is not a
So the
huge
bare
stand of
ones
ash, but
are probably ash.
ash. Yep. And
You,
these colored ones might be maples or oaks or something.
yeah, they could be
Okay.
maple starting to turn.
So let me go back another. So here's a true winter
Okay.
or
Yeah.
spring. This is a spring. Well, it says it's spring 5/4 or something. So lots of deciduous trees in here and some conifers. Okay.
Yeah, that's useful to know.
It is useful. I get it. And then there's another spring. And then here's a September, but it must be a fairly early September because everything is
Yeah.
green. Yeah, that's
Doesn't
not very
really tell
helpful.
you
No.
too
Okay.
much there. Yeah.
And then here's a September 2014, but this one is a
Okay.
late September, at least that's what my screen is saying.
Yeah.
So here it looks like maybe a couple trees have lost leaves, but
Yeah.
there maybe is some of this purple color in here.
Yeah. And so I see further down as well,
Mhm.
that kind of bronzy color.
Yep. Yep.
So that
Yep.
would tell me that I would want to go look there between that
Yep.
picture and some of your other pictures where the
Yep.
trees were bare. I think, okay, there's probably ash there because that color is not the bright reds
Yep.
of maples,
Right.
and all of the trees still have their leaves there. So the ones that are turning are the earliest
Unlikely to
ones to
be
turn.
right.
So those are
Yep.
probably, I would say a lot of those are probably ash.
And I
Would be
know
my
for sure that
guess.
there's a lot of ash here. So, and I don't
Yeah.
know, I think it's mostly green ash. So for whatever that's
Okay.
worth, it's a fairly wet sort of seepy site. So maybe, again, maybe the color is a little different than what a white ash stand might look like.
Yeah. And there definitely are differences in the different colors. And Jake made a good comment about fall. I need to read his comment, but that other imagery with would maybe make it easier to tell the differences of the different species. And that's very true. I mean, there are probably way better professional tools that people can use to identify trees. This for me was just a real quick and dirty. Everybody has it on their computer. Everybody
Right.
can do it. And you don't need special software. You don't need special imaging, expensive things. It's something that's free to everybody. So that was sort of my thought for doing this. But yeah, you're right, Jake, that there are definitely better tools out there for people who have access to them. This is the quick and dirty one for people who don't have access to anything else. So yeah, that was really useful to go through that, Nancy. Does anybody else have a site that they want to just look at and have us go through together and see what we can see?
Seems like people are shy today.
Do you have another site, Nancy, you want to look at?
It is smaller, but we could try. There's a site. Yeah, let me share again. There is a site at a different preserve where we've done a trap tree. Okay, so this preserve is called the Loring Conant Preserve, and it's in Phipps. Excuse me, it's in Georgetown. So it doesn't seem to be coming up. But let me see if I just do Georgetown. No, it doesn't seem to come up. I'm not sure how to, so let's just navigate to
Okay.
Georgetown and then we can go from there because I know how to get there, but
Okay.
Georgetown, Maine.
Well, we can just follow along with you.
Yeah. It's at the very tippy tip of Georgetown. So we're going to zoom in on this area way up here. And so here we are. And this intersection more or less marks where the parking lot is, and the stand of ash is sort of in here. So I'm zooming in to the west of this intersection of North End Road and Soldiers Point Road or Lane, to the east of this dammed up stream, or excuse me, to the west of that stream. And it looks like the image that has gone to, I'm going to scoot the slider all the way to the right to see the most recent image, starting with that. Oh, okay. And so, yeah,
So that's
October
October
2021.
maybe. Yeah.
I see some, what I think I'm seeing is color on some deciduous trees when other deciduous trees still have all green.
Yeah. Which tells me that those are probably ash trees, those bronzy ones.
And that is consistent with my experience of this site, that there are ash trees in there. I think it's white ash mostly. Cool. Okay, so let's just slide the slider to the left. So this is a 2019. This is a November shot. So here we're seeing, I think what we're seeing is some deciduous trees, probably oaks that still are retaining leaves, but we've got a lot of deciduous trees that have no leaves at this point, which that could be a variety of things.
Yeah. So
Okay,
it's useful to see where the oaks are.
Yep.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Winter.
Yep. Sorry, I just went back to the oaks for a minute just to, yep. So there's some oaks mixed in there. They hold their leaves for a while. Okay, and then winter, like you said, this one says it was taken in, at least at the top, it says May. So early spring, nothing much going on. Another early spring. And then this one says September, but it must be on the bottom right now. I'm getting a date of 9/5. So that's probably a little early, right? For there to be much going on. And that's what it looks like. Maybe a dead tree right there, but okay.
Yeah, not much.
This one says 9/27/2014. And so here it looks like a little bit of just starting.
Yeah, just a little bit of color, a little bit of that purpling up.
Yep.
You can see maybe that some of the trees are starting to get a slightly darker, like purple on green kind of color. So
gosh, yeah, you've got a good eye, Colleen. I see
well,
some bronze.
just sort of saying that.
Yeah. Okay, maybe here. Yeah. Okay.
With putting that with the knowledge of some of the other time periods that you just showed, so you can sort of start to put several things together and slightly have a bit more confidence than if you're just looking at
one photo. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Okay. Oh wait, actually, so this was a spring photo, and we said that ash is one of the last to leaf out. So to me, I'm seeing some deciduous trees that clearly already have leaves, but then some trees in here that don't yet have leaves. And so again, that could be a sign. Okay.
So that's pretty rare to see that, because that's such a small window.
It is, right, like you said.
You might actually have seen that. And then you put that with some of the fall imagery that you had, and you can be pretty certain that you've got ash there.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely going to use this at some of our smaller preserves anyway to help direct our search, because it's hard to know where. I mean, we have some information for some of our preserves, but not a lot of detail for many of our preserves. So this is super helpful.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I've just sort of run out of time, but does anybody have any questions before you have to leave?
I guess I did have one question, Colleen, which was, have you found any any similar compilation of aerial imagery, any kind of like layer file or something in the Esri ArcGIS world? I mean, I know the time slider in Google is just so simple and nice. Have you come across any similar sort of set of imagery that people can get in the Arc environment?
I don't know enough about that to answer that properly.
Okay,
there are other
fair
people
enough.
that would probably be able to answer that.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't have the confidence to say.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like
Oh, no,
you
Jake,
can get pretty
maybe can
far.
help you.
Yeah, Nancy, happy to talk about that. For high res, you kind of have to go for commercial imagery, which is typically not something that you're going to be able to get like, in those sorts of other repositories. Like sometimes you can get like USDA imagery, which is every couple of years, but if you want something that's more specific to especially like a certain time window when like during leaf out or something like that, usually the high res commercial data is what you're going to need, which can be tough to get your hands on. There are some tools like when I work with that can make that easier, but yeah, happy to talk more about that.
So as I said, this is just the really quick and dirty, and any real GIS person would probably laugh at me, but anybody can do this. It's so dead simple and it's so free.
Well, I think it's a great sort of entree into the idea of using this kind of data for anybody who is curious or is just at the beginning of their journey. So thank you so much. Very interesting. And Nancy, thank you too for everything, yes, for your sharing your screen with us today and for helping us get this Zoom, rolling. So
yes, thank you.
So really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. I will just super quickly mention that the Ash Protection Collaborative across Wabanaki has rescheduled their workshop that was supposed to be at the conference. It's going to be next Wednesday, June 26th, and we do have a few spaces still available in that. If you're interested in attending that, you can email me at mltn@mcht.org. All right, well, have a great day, everyone. Thanks again, Colleen.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Thanks for hosting.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thanks, Donna.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye now.